Welcome to Total Spectrum Spotlight, an informative look and an insightful discussion of today's legislative issues and political trends.
Hi, I'm Congressman Erik Paulsen, and welcome to Total Spectrum Spotlight. The midterm elections are coming up fast, which makes today's conversation especially timely as we speak with a thoughtful and insightful election pro. Nathan Gonzales is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections, which provides nonpartisan analysis of campaigns. He is frequently quoted in many publications nationally like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and appears on many media outlets as a political analyst, including Fox and NBC and others. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a little while.
It has been a while. It's great to see you in person. Look, historically, the midterm elections after a president has won the White House is typically a very good night for the party not in power that doesn't have the White House. So right now the president is Democrat, you have the Senate and the House, Democrat control. Republicans have been preparing for this national red wave. But Republican momentum has shifted a little bit and declined recently. In your opinion, what has caused this shift in momentum?
Well, in one word, Dobbs. I think the Dobbs decision by the U.S. Supreme Court and overturning Roe v. Wade was a political game changer. One of the things that it did is that it energized the Democratic base. We have to remember that in 2018 and 2020, President Trump was a turnout machine for the Democratic Party. He was driving Republicans out, but he was also driving Democrats out for different reasons, but they wanted to send a message. But once he lost, then the Democrats were a little bit apathetic. Maybe they were disappointed in how the Biden administration and Democratic Congress have acted. But now, with the reversal of Roe v. Wade, Democrats are back to that enthusiasm gap has closed. And so what that's done is it has limited Republican opportunities, that they can't rely on getting Democratic voters anymore or getting as large a number of independent voters because of that, people prioritizing that threat to the right to a legal abortion. So that, I think all along I've been talking to groups say, I think Republicans are going to have between a good election or a great election. And now with that decision, I think we're closer to a good election for Republicans rather than that great one.
Okay. Well, of course, the time between Labor Day and Election Day is still an eternity in politics. And so are there things that could still tip the balance one way or the other in terms of gaining that momentum or shifting the momentum again?
Well, I'm not sure there's a single event that's going to change things fundamentally, but because the margins are so narrow, just a shift in a single race or two could make an impact. We really haven't had debates in some of these key races. Those are opportunities for candidates to either shine or make a significant misstep. That could affect the balance of power, particularly in the Senate. But also, we have to remember that more and more people are voting early. And so that lessens or dampens the impact of a late event, because when we get to a few weeks out, some people are going to already have voted and can't change that vote if something happens.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about the House a little bit. I think, in my view, and I think the conventional view, is that Republicans will gain the majority in the House. After all, they only need 5 seats to capture control. The political environment has been improving a little bit for Democrats. Biden's approval rating has come up. Democrats' edge in fundraising has been growing. We have had a few special elections in August, and we've had a surprise election in New York, for instance, I think in the 19th Congressional District, that Democrats had an upset victory. And then in Alaska, where we had the Democrat candidate Mary Peltola beat former Republican governor and vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin.
I've heard of her.
Yeah, she was not successful. She's running again in November, but both of those special elections, do they offer any clues as to how November will go, or should we not be reading much into the special elections in August?
Well, we've both been doing this long enough, and we've been told over and over, don't draw too many conclusions from special elections, that they are special and they have unique circumstances. And with each of these races, you can find unique circumstances, but when you zoom out and you say, okay, first of all, there was an amendment in Kansas about abortion that was significant, that was rejected. There was a special election in Nebraska where Democrats overperformed. 2 special elections in New York. There was the 19th district. There was also the 23rd district, which didn't get as much attention, but where Democrats overperformed. Alaska, where Democrats overperformed. So then you start to say, okay, maybe we should pay attention that there's something broader going on, particularly when you couple it with Biden modestly improving his job approval rating, Democrats doing better on the national generic ballot. You say, okay, there's something that we need to be paying attention to. But at Inside Elections, what we're focused on the individual House districts that are going to happen in November. And that polling has not yet caught up with this national narrative about kind of Democrats on surging a bit. It could be a lagging indicator, and we could see that in the next few weeks, but it hasn't yet shown up on a race-by-race level in the House.
Well, then shifting to the Senate, fight for the control of a 50-50 split Senate right now is probably more of a coin flip. Or are some of those races, which are statewide, are they starting to crystallize a little bit more? Because some of the House races could be impacted by statewide dynamics, obviously. Take a couple minutes, maybe talk about some of those races that you're watching or which states you're watching. Who are some of the candidates? What should we be paying attention to?
I think what's fascinating is that the races may have started to crystallize, but not in the way that we thought. For example, Ohio, where Republican Senator Rob Portman is not running for re-election. Republicans shouldn't be having trouble holding Ohio. Mm-hmm. Trump won it easily twice, but yet we're seeing SLF, the major Republican super PAC, having to spend millions of dollars holding that Ohio seat because J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee and former New York Times bestselling author, just hasn't been a great candidate. Mm-hmm. And so how that impacts things is that Republicans having to spend in Ohio is less money that Republicans could be spending trying to defeat incumbents in Washington State or Colorado. In Pennsylvania, where Pat Toomey is not running for re-election, Republican open seat. If the election were held today, Democratic Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman would probably win. I didn't expect that because Biden won Pennsylvania so narrowly, and those are the types of states that look like Republicans were going to be surging in the with Biden so unpopular. But the Senate is going to be a state-by-state, just a slog. And we have to remember that it could come down to, once again, Congressman, a Georgia runoff. That if no one gets 50% in that Raphael Warnock, Herschel Walker race, it goes to a December runoff that could end up deciding control of the Senate once again.
Sure, okay. Any thoughts on Arizona or North Carolina, for instance? Yeah. These are other states that are being watched closely, right?
Absolutely. I mean, North Carolina, I think, it's always been in that competitive conversation, but has been ignored a little bit. But Republicans admit they have work to do. Congressman Ted Budd, the Republican nominee, and Sherry Beasley, former retired state Supreme Court Chief Justice, that's a neck-and-neck race right now. And once again, if we were having this conversation 6 months ago or a year ago, I don't think we would be talking about North Carolina. I think Republicans would be winning that comfortably, but it's not a comfortable race right now. Arizona, we kind of hear Republicans talking about paths to control the Senate without Arizona. Senator Mark Kelly is one of Democrats' best incumbents, great fundraiser. He's not exactly a politician. He's a senator, but also retired astronaut, military veteran. And the Republican candidate, Blake Masters, is one of those who has struggled a little bit in his new role as a candidate. And so I think you're seeing Republicans try to figure out how can we get control of the Senate without Arizona. But it's still competitive.
Yeah, interesting. Well, final question I should ask you. Every year there are a few sleeper races, it seems, that
I try to avoid those.
Well, and everyone is surprised at a couple of races, and maybe this could be one of those years. At least 6 months ago, I think Republicans thought, well, we won some surprise races we didn't expect it to. But are there any potential sleeper races that you're watching in either the House or the Senate?
I would say in the Senate, two races come to mind. One in Utah. This is where Republican Senator Mike Lee is running for re-election. Democrats opted not to nominate a candidate, and they are kind of hitching their wagon to independent Evan McMullin. Evan McMullin, former House staffer who ran for president a few years ago. And so we'll see how that plays out. About a third of Republican primary voters voted for someone other than Senator Lee in the primary. And I know in talking with Evan McMullin, he thinks if I can get 25% of the Republican vote, along with Democrats and a significant number of independents, I can get there. So that's one to watch. In Iowa, it feels like something's in the water in Iowa. There are three competitive House races. And Senator Chuck Grassley's numbers are not where they have been in the past. Democrat Mike Franken is the nominee, and that's just one that we're keeping an eye on and see is there something happening in Iowa up and down the ballot.
Great. Well, this has been very informative. Thanks so much for sharing your insight and your thoughts and your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.
And thanks to all our viewers. We will see you next time on Total Spectrum Spotlight.
Thank you for watching Total Spectrum Spotlight. For more information about Total Spectrum, please visit us at totalspectrumsga.com. Total Spectrum, strategies uniquely focused on your success.